The title for this series is Practicing the Presence of God. Now, I borrowed this title from a 17th century monk. His name is Brother Lawrence. How many have ever heard of Brother Lawrence? Some of you have? Yeah. This was a guy who did everything he could to get into God's presence. Okay, he was in the army or in the military. He stepped out of that, converted to be a monk, and if you ever get a chance to read his book, it's not very long, but it's called Practicing the Presence of God. But I have a few quotes of what he said. He said, "How happy we would be if we could find the treasure of which the gospel speaks. All else would remain as nothing, as it's boundless. The more you search it, the greater the riches you will find. Let us search unceasingly and let us not stop until we have found it." He also said, "I cannot imagine how a religious person can live a satisfied life without practicing the presence of God. For my part, I keep myself retired with him in the depths of the center of my soul as much as I can, and while I am so with him, I fear nothing. But the least from him is unsupportable." He also discovered that the experience of God's love can be attained in every little thing you do. Okay, it's not full of. You don't have to come to this church to experience the presence of God. Okay, you can do this every single time you're. Well, let's just say end it with that. Every single time. Okay, God's presence is everywhere. He's omnipresent. You can enter his presence. You can encounter him anytime, anywhere. But Brother Lawrence said this: "We ought not to be weary in doing little things for the love of God, who regards not the greatness of the work, but the love in which it is performed." See, and I've said this before, it doesn't matter what you're doing, but if you're doing it unto God, you're worshiping him. Okay? It's not a little thing. It's not an inconsequential thing. It's amazing. It's huge. See, Brother Lawrence was able to see seemingly common things, and he told a story about it. This is a man talking about Brother Lawrence, and this is a guy who knew him, and this is his quote. He says, "In the deep of winter, Herman," which was the name of Brother Lawrence before he became a monk, "looked at a barren tree, stripped of leaves and fruit, waiting silently and patiently for the sure hope of summer abundance. Gazing at the tree, Herman grasped for the first time the extravagance of God's grace and the unfailing sovereignty of divine providence. Like the tree, he himself was seemingly dead, but God had life waiting for him, and the turn of the season would bring fullness. At that moment," he said, "that leafless tree first flashed upon my soul of the fact of God, and the love that God had never ceased to burn." You see, we have a lesson we can learn from this. We look out at the trees now. A lot of the leaves have turned. A lot of the trees have lost their leaves. We look at the tree and we say, that tree looks dead, right? By all appearance, the tree looks dead. But Brother Lawrence saw something in that I think each one of us can see as well. And that is that God is preparing that tree to live through a season that is coming. You see, if the trees would not lose their leaves, if the trees kept their leaves out in full bloom and it froze, what would happen to the tree? Anybody? It would die. The sap, mostly made out of water, it would expand, it would blow, and the entire tree would die. That's how a tree would be killed, is if it was not prepared for the winter season. So let's not look at the tree as being death, but let's look at the tree as being God's answer to provide for that tree's life. See, God provided a way for that tree to survive through the Canadian winter. And he will provide for you as well. Any amens? Amens? He will provide. So those are the lessons. That when we look at things like that, it's not just our situations we're in, let's not look at them as being the end or being the death or the dire straits. But instead, let's see those situations we're in as being God's way of protecting us through that season of life. He's got us covered. So how do we practice the presence of God? When we're looking at the presence of God, there's three aspects to the presence of God that we want to deal with. The first one is thanksgiving, being thankful. The second one is praise, okay, praising God. The third one is worship. Those three enable us to experience the presence of God. In part one, we considered thanksgiving. And this is what God has done for you. Okay? You're thanking Him for what God has done for you. Today we want to look at praise. And this is just looking in general what God has done. And then next time we're going to get together, we're actually going to look at worship. And worship is just looking at who God is. So who God is worship. What God has done is praise. And what God has done for you is thanksgiving.